Welcome into Stacking the Box. I am Sterling Holmes, joined by Ian McMillan. Check that. No chance. The Canadian's out. Cody Williams, the American, is in. You can follow him on the X at the Sizzle20 after Four Nations. Zero chance. I was going to sit here and let Ian berate me for what he thinks is the greatness of Canada. No, because we're talking football. USA football. USA. Cody, how you doing?
How many Super Bowls has Canada won? That's the real question. And the answer is 0. And so that's why Ian's not here, honestly. Yeah, but, I mean, like, does he really have a leg to stand on? I don't know if you saw him on Twitter during that game, but all he did was talk a whole lot of crap about the Canadian goalie until, oh, no, they won, and then he changed his tune.
Yeah, dude talk smack and then get smacked. I mean, come on. He is the ultimate cooler. That's why we had to bring on the Sizzle. The Sizzle, because he only has lukewarm takes, warm enough to get it going, and you can call me the Boil, because boiling takes, although I don't know if I want to be called the Boil. A lot to get into. Obviously, we're going to do a little fun with QB matchmaking. We'll do a little 2-minute drill. We're going to talk about banning the Tush Push, because why would we not talk about the potential banning of the Tush Push? But let's start here. Travis Kelce back for another season. We're all assuming this is his last ride. We can go quickly through this because we talk about this a lot over there on Arrowhead Addict. But, Brett Veach spoke at the Combine and pretty much reiterated that, hey, he has 1 year left in his contract. He's going to be back and play that final year. Says he's, quote, fired up. He, before the Super Bowl, sounded like Travis Kelce was going to be back. Then after the Super Bowl directly following, he was a little more wishy-washy, which has made everyone think maybe he's done. But I just didn't think he would go out like that. And again, according to the Chiefs GM, Brett Veach, all but just confirming, more or less just saying it's a pretty good opportunity, pretty good chance he's coming back. Any takeaways from 87 back in KC for one more year?
No, I'm 100% with you. Like, yes, it was kind of weird after the Super Bowl for how quickly that narrative caught fire. Like that he might retire, that might have been his last, effort as a Kansas City Chief in the NFL as a whole. And it was hard to buy. Like, he's such a competitor that he was going to go out like this. I will say the one thing with Veach basically confirming that he is coming back, that kind of puts the Chiefs in a little bit of a tough spot. That's they would have saved $17 million on the cap had he retired. That would have been money that could have been used towards what is going to be a very important free agency period for the Chiefs. So that's kind of one of my takeaways that I'm kind of looking at secondarily is this makes Veach's job a little bit harder this offseason.
Yeah, it honestly does, because Kelce is, I think, the same Kelce we're going to see from this year, although I've been pointing out a lot of times when guys know it's their final season, they have a tendency to step it up just a little bit. You see it a lot in baseball. We saw it with Peyton Manning to an extent, but you see it a lot in baseball, right? Where, David Ortiz was on a decline. Then his final year, he goes out and just absolutely rakes. Albert Pujols, done, right? He's done, gets one chance to go back to St. Louis, second half of the season, absolutely rakes. You see this all the time. Derek G. I mean, guys, when they're in their final season and when they know it's their final season, they have a tendency to play like it is going to be their last. Like, they understand that. We saw it with Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce, he was decline of his career on a downturn, and then he came back for one more year, which turned into a couple. But those years were some of his best of his career because he, in my opinion, viewed every single game like it could be his last. I don't think Travis Kelce viewed this year like that. And that's why I think you saw the ups and downs and the occasional greatness coupled with the complete lack of almost athleticism now at this point. But I do think Travis will come back and be effective. I don't think he'll have 97 catches because obviously Rashee Rice was gone last year. We'll see with the suspension and what he looks like. But with the emergence of Xavier, Kelce no longer has to be that guy. I don't think he was supposed to this year, but if we're being honest, with Hollywood Brown getting injured first play of preseason, with Rashee Rice going out very, very early, with a rookie, no idea what the Chiefs had in Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce went from a secondary, tertiary piece thrust back into the primary role, and that's just too much for him at this point in his career. So I do think we'll see a rejuvenated and more effective Travis Kelce next year, even if the overall numbers, like the 850 yards, looks about the same.
No, 100%. And to your point about guys on their last leg, like I'm a Cowboys fan, and watching Jason Witten at the end of his career, like, got to that last season and he kind of found a little bit of extra juice in the tank. And you make a great point about the personnel did Kelce no favors this season. Like one of the things I think was evident in the Super Bowl loss was the lack of speed on that offense. Like it just wasn't what we're used to seeing from the Chiefs. And Kelce thrives when there's speed around him because obviously his athleticism has declined over the years. And so when he has that speed around him, it allows him to be more of a cerebral player. As you start to get, Xavier Worthy into a bigger role, if they bring back Hollywood Brown and he's fully healthy, if you get Rashee Rice back on the field for however long that is, that's going to help Kelce as well.
Yeah, 100%. Let's move on to the Tush Push because I've gone back and forth on this. Now, the Tush Push has been brought in front of the NFL in regards to being banned. It was the Packers that actually put this out there when it was originally announced that one team has tried to ban the Tush Push. I've seen a lot of clowns on the X be like, well, of course it's the Chiefs. Why would the Chiefs be the team to ban the Tush Push? Right. Why? They're in the AFC. The only chance they have of pay, like it was just the dumbest smooth brain argument I had heard in a while, honestly. But of course, you got to pile on the Chiefs.
Of course.
But it turns out it was the Packers, which NFC, and I don't know. I guess originally I was against banning the Tush Push. Originally, I was not against banning the Tush Push. The game that really stood out to me that made me change my tune and said, okay, maybe we actually should ban the Tush Push was the Eagles against Washington in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. That was just brutal. Not fun, not enjoyable. We're going to grant the Eagles a touchdown if it happens again. Well, the Eagles are trying to get an advantage, and what was Washington doing? Also taking advantage of the same rules. So why penalize the defense? Why are you giving all the credit? So I thought that was a little absurd. But the reason why I've pushed back just a little bit now on this has all been like in a week span, by the way. I go back and forth.
Things move quickly.
Politicians can sway me so easily. I'm a rube. But when it comes down to if you ban the Tush Push, then do you have to ban offensive linemen pushing running backs? Mm-hmm. Because that's the big thing with the Tush Push is people pushing the quarterback forward, right?
Right.
Well, if you ban that, then do you have to ban offensive linemen when they get behind and they're trying to push the pile? Is that then now banned? Because that seems like two different things, but yet it's very, very similar, and that's where my pushback came from.
No, and I fall in a little bit of a gray area as well, which it seems like you do as well, where I don't think there's any problem with the play. Like we've seen other teams try it. They're just not as good at it as the Eagles. Like I don't agree with Nick Sirianni in many facets of life. That's one I do agree with them. The Eagles are better at it than everyone else in the league. And so I don't think they should be penalized for that. I do think that perhaps there are some rule tweaks that could be made because you argue about, the Washington game in the playoffs. Like they're trying to, bend the rules there. Okay, maybe there's little tweaks that you can make to the Tush Push that don't necessarily ban it, but maybe you can't, I don't know, maybe there's some alignment that you can't be in to run that type of play. Like, I don't think if we go to where you're talking about a spot where you're banning all pushing from behind, that's not a spot. I think that you're starting to bastardize football a little bit in that way. And that's not what I want to happen.
Yeah, it's so difficult. Again, I almost wish that other teams were better as well. Because when it's just the Eagles, then it seems like you're out to stop something that again, I give credit to the Eagles, by the way. They've nearly perfected this, right? And the Bills were really good all year, but it's still not the same as the Eagles because we saw that in the playoffs and the Chiefs stopped the Bills on the Tush Push multiple times. Mm-hmm. And that's where my frustration or getting in the gray area lies is the Eagles are the only one that truthfully utilizes it the correct way. So then it feels like you're penalizing one team, but at the same time, it is such a boring play. I do think injuries arise. We're trying to talk about player safety. It's just it's a very difficult situation to be in. I think if you are the NFL, we'll find out. Obviously, we'll see how many teams agree or disagree. You'd have to imagine the Bills would not want to ban it. You'd have to imagine if you are a team with a very big quarterback, you don't want to ban it. But how many teams have the guy who's able to get that sort of push? I do wonder how many vindictive people. I mean, the Cowboys, I would have to imagine would vote against would vote in favor of banning it. Washington would have to be that team. The Giants, if you're in the NFC, you're more than likely trying to be a team that does if you're the Chiefs. Quite frankly, I know it seems silly and unfair, but if you are the Chiefs and you're sitting here going, we don't even run QB sneaks with Mahomes. We're never going to run this play. Why would the Chiefs not ban or be in favor of banning it? Like, just from an outside perspective.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's advantage Chiefs in that situation because they're not going to run a sneak. They're much less the tush push. They're not even running a sneak with Mahomes. So like it's to their advantage to say, yeah, I mean, if you're banning the tush push, well, like the next logical step to that argument, and basically the way the league would be running at that point would be we're just not really running QB sneaks anymore. And so then you put it on a level playing field for the Chiefs, and they're just advantage again there.
So, again, it's a very fine line. I think if you told me right now on February 26th, is the tush push getting banned? I think my answer would be no. I think there's too many gray areas of, again, as the things we're talking about, then what do you do with QB sneaks? What do you do with running backs getting pushed by the offensive lineman? I think you get in too many. You open up a new can of worms that I don't think the NFL wants to deal with. So I just think that the tush push will most likely be here to stay. Browns GM Andrew Berry reiterates that he is not trading Myles Garrett. Any thoughts here?
I bet he did reiterate that because, there's a little thing called leverage in the NFL, and you don't want to lose it. And the moment he says, yes, we're trading Myles Garrett, you lose a lot of leverage in those conversations. And so, like, he can say this all he wants, but if Myles Garrett wants a trade, Myles Garrett's going to get a trade. Like, I firmly believe that in my heart of hearts. Just when you have a star player of that caliber who is in a situation that has been as dysfunctional as the Browns have been since the Deshaun Watson trade, I just feel like you're going to risk a lot of malcontents in the locker room. You're assumedly bringing in some sort of new quarterback situation this offseason. Do you really want it to be a tumultuous situation that they're walking into? And then also you look at how they're going to have to rebuild after the Deshaun Watson situation like plays itself out. Draft picks could be really valuable to that process. So at the end of the day, I don't take much stock in Andrew Berry doubling down on this.
The one thing I will say is if they trade him, that's a $37 million dead cap hit. I mean, that's huge. I mean, he's on a very team-friendly deal for 2 more seasons this year and 1 more. It's around the $20 million mark, and there's a lot of void years. I believe it was 3 or 4 void years after that on the Myles Garrett contract. There's going to be some – like, I know Myles wants to be traded. I just don't know the feasibility of it. If you're the Browns, I get that. You want to make that guy happy. You want to make sure you can start fresh, and you want some draft picks. But also, if you're a team trading for Myles, you have to make sure – I know he wants to win, but does he also want a new – record-setting contract? Does he now want to get traded to your team, and now you have to turn around and make him the highest-paid edge rusher? Because if that's the case, you're not getting much back in the terms of draft capital, right? Because then teams are like, oh, so now we're paying debit and credit for this guy. The value goes way, way down, right? So I don't know, man. I think there's a very good chance that Myles Garrett is a Brown next year. I don't know if I'd bet on it, but in my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense for the Browns to trade him. I know it sucks. I like Myles Garrett. He's, we've talked him on Radio Road this year even. I just, if you're the Browns, I don't see the value because the contract that he had signed with you, one, helps you if the next 2 years. But if you trade him, the contract is going to be used against you because that dead number jumps up to nearly double.
Yes, but at the same time, like if you're the Browns, you're already in cap hell, man. Like you have the Deshaun Watson contract fully guaranteed sitting on there. Like at a certain point, you can't just keep, trying to Band-Aid that together. And I realize like Myles Garrett's a hell of a Band-Aid. Like Myles Garrett is one of the best players in the NFL. And so like as you're trying to rebuild, yeah, it would help to have Myles Garrett on your team. But at the same time, like, do you just at a certain point, I wonder if the front office's mentality is we've got to cut our losses and start fresh as possible. And your points are valid. Your points are well taken. I'm just a little more dubious of the Browns doing something that makes sense, frankly, which you're talking sense and that, yeah, it's the Browns.
Yeah. I think it was along the lines of if he plays this year, it's $22 million. If you trade him, you're paying him $37 million to not play for you, basically.
Right.
What's the better situation? Having Myles for 22 or not having Myles and having to pay 37? Again, there's going to be some areas of the cap you can always, circumvent and work around, and maybe you have to take on some. Again, I get all that stuff, but I'm still a little. I would be surprised, I guess, if Myles Garrett is not a Brown. And I don't know if Browns fans like that or not, but I think he will be a Brown. Let's get into a fun little game here, Cody. Let's get into QB Matchmaker. Let's start with Matthew Stafford. Where do you think Matthew Stafford is?
So, if I had to guess, I think he probably sticks with the Rams. However, in the interest of trying to talk about, let's say these trade rumors do materialize, I think the Giants make the most sense for me, just because the Giants as an organization seem a little desperate right now for a quarterback. I think that's putting it mildly. They need some sort of stability there. You've invested in Malik Neighbors. You've invested in the offensive line, not, kind of fruitlessly in the offensive line, but you have invested there. You need to start making good on that. Daniel Jones obviously wasn't the guy. Neither was Tommy Cutlets. Neither was Drew Lock. So I think the Giants are the right team to make that aggressive type of move because they frankly feel like they need to in the front office.
Yeah. I think, again, most likely Matthew Stafford is a Ram. He had been able to go see what he's basically going to get on the open market because he wants a new contract. The rumor I heard was around $50 million per year. That just seems absurd for a guy who's been on the decline. Again, he's still a really good quarterback, and the playoff game and all that stuff, they were close to making it back to the Super Bowl. I get all that stuff, but you look at the overarching numbers the past few seasons, they've been on a decline. At his age, I just would be a little surprised if he was able to even get close to that number. Yeah. So I think at some point it might be, okay, guys, you're right. I'm not worth that amount of money. Let's try to sit here and renegotiate, especially because there's a good offensive system still there in place in LA. Still a chance to win in LA. I don't know what your chances are, but they were damn close this year to going to the Super Bowl, right? So yeah. Again, was it a surprise? Yeah, 100%. It was a massive surprise. But when you have the veteran quarterback with Puka Nacua, some veterans on that team coupled with Sean McVay, you always have a chance. When it comes to next best situation, if it's not in LA, what if they just traded back for Jared Goff? Just swap those guys back and forth. Well, hear me out. Detroit needs a slightly better quarterback. And they're already paying Jared Goff that amount of money. You just get Jared Goff back to the Rams. Jared Goff's younger, right? So you can get back and work with the Rams. Who says no?
Probably both of them at this point, because that's a PR nightmare waiting to happen. I mean, would be great for the content business, and since that's what we're in, I'm not gonna push back on it too hard. But seems like it could be a bad situation if that happens.
Does make some slight sense, though. It really makes some slight sense. I thought it was very funny. All right, Sam Darnold. Where does Sam Darnold go?
I think Sam Darnold ends up with the Raiders because there have been reports that the Raiders are very heavily pursuing Matthew Stafford. They seem to have their hands in all these quarterback situations. And with Pete Carroll coming in as the head coach, Tom Brady and the ownership, I think that they feel that they need to make a splash. And I don't think that splash is a rookie quarterback. I don't think Pete Carroll comes back to the NFL coaching world if he's not basically promised something that's ready-made, ready for you to go in and try to mold this roster in your image. So I don't think a rookie quarterback is necessarily what you want under Pete Carroll. I think they're looking for someone who's a veteran. Sam Darnold's obviously coming off a big year. I think Tom Brady probably looks at that and in his hubris looks at that and says, yeah, we can help replicate what they did in Minnesota with Sam Darnold in Vegas. Do I think that's actually the case? Probably not. But I do think that the Raiders can talk themselves into Sam Darnold pretty easily.
I think it's the Giants that talked themselves into Sam Darnold. He heads back to New York to play for the other team. That feels like such a Giants move. Yeah. It would be very – I don't know what Sam Darnold's going to be. I personally think it was probably just a great year. I don't think he's this guy. I don't think he was the same guy that he was with the Jets, obviously. Yeah. But I think he is a borderline starting NFL quarterback. The Giants, to me, are the team that's going to overpay, just how they overpaid Daniel Jones, and they will be the team that brings in Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of his success was Kevin O'Connell being a really, really freaking good coach. And one of the reasons why I'm still high on what J.J. McCarthy can be is because Kevin O'Connell, I have a lot of faith in him. To the Giants' point, though, I do wonder if Darnold would be hesitant to come back to New York because, he obviously had a really bad time there with the Jets. And, obviously it's a different organization, but I just wonder if that media market has just soured him on that idea.
Yeah, that could be a very, very good point there. But money almost fixes everything.
True. If they overpaid tremendously, then you can deal with it.
Next guy, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins.
Oh, that's a Browns quarterback if I've ever seen one, brother. It's in the world where the Falcons cut him, which I think is probably the most likely scenario that we're going to get to, and they kind of just have to eat their vegetables when it comes, like the Broncos did with Russell Wilson, get out from under a bad contract. That means you're going to be able to sign Kirk Cousins to a veteran minimum or around there type of deal. That fits the Browns' financials and what they're able to do. They obviously want to get some stability at quarterback in there. Who knows what they do in the draft, but even if you do draft someone, have Kirk Cousins in there like the Falcons were trying to do with Michael Penix. I think that's actually a really smart move for the Browns. I'm expecting a pretty sizable bounce back season for Kirk Cousins this year. I think that Achilles injury, when you're coming back from that, it takes a solid 12 months for you to even feel right, much less start playing football and quarterback at a high level.
For me, I think he's a Raider.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the same reason why you said Sam Darnold. I think it's a Raider because Pete Carroll is going to want a veteran. I think they're trying to get some stability in Las Vegas. I think they're sitting here going, okay, we tried to take some relatively big swings. We try to give the Raider notion back. We try to give, the old school, let's go Antonio Pierce and let's try Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. They try to do it a unique way. And that's not going to work. No. I think they need to bring stability back. It almost reminds me of the Chiefs pre-Andy Reid and then pre-Alex Smith, where it's a case of, okay, we're going to bring in Andy Reid to bring stability here. We're going to bring in Alex Smith to bring stability here. Do we think we're going to win a Super Bowl with Alex Smith? Probably not, but he can bring respectability back to this organization. We can go from 2-14 to all of a sudden making the playoffs in Andy's first year. I think that's what the Raiders are trying to do, basically saying, we know Pete Carroll's not going to be here for a long time. We know Kirk Cousins isn't going to be here for a long time, but we need to bring some respectability back. We need to try and at least make the playoffs. We need to try and at least go 9-8. Let's try something here. With Christian Wilkins, and if you can get Max Crosby back, then you have at least two great pieces, which we didn't get to see this year because Christian Wilkins' injury. I guess if it were me, I think the Raiders, if they were smart, would do something along these lines. Again, you're not going to win a Super Bowl like this, but you'll at least have some respectability and get the organization trending in the right direction.
No, I like that a lot as well. I think the Raiders are a absolutely logical spot. I have a question for you though. It's kind of in the Myles Garrett, Andrew Berry conversation vein. When Thomas Dimitroff, when Terry Fontenot come out and they say, oh, Kirk Cousins is our backup, we're going to keep him on the roster. Do you buy any ounce of that? Do you think there's any chance that happens?
I think there's a slight chance. I just don't think it's a great chance.
Yeah.
Quarterback's always going to be different than almost any other position. It really is. I would be surprised if Kirk Cousins was a Falcon this year. I think I would be.
Okay. I'm in the same boat too. That to me, again, so much of this is about leverage. If they are going to try to trade him before they cut him, you can't let them know, hey, he's getting cut if you don't trade for him.
Well, and there's a possibility where you could trade for him, but the Falcons still eat the contract, which exactly. I think that's if I were the Falcons, I'd do, because I think you could get if you're like, we're going to eat the contract, because either way we're on the line for this.
Oh yeah.
If the Falcons did that and said we'll eat everything but the veteran minimum, you might get a third.
I was literally thinking a third round pick. I think that's absolutely reasonable if the Falcons are willing to do that.
Because you might have 4 or 5 teams vying for his services, and now it's the vet minimum. You're sitting here going, oh well, yeah, I would give that money up for a quarterback who can potentially bring us back to relevancy. Yeah.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense and lends even further credence to your Raiders point. That seems like right up what the Raiders should be looking for.
I can't wait to go back and have none of these be right. All right, Aaron Rodgers. Where's Rodgers go?
I think you might be right on this one, but I went with the Steelers. I think that the Steelers are one of the most difficult franchises to predict what they're going to do outside of, I think they're definitely going to get a wide receiver this offseason. Probably not in a smart, well-advised move, but I think they are going to do that hell or high water. But I also think that when you look at their quarterback situation, the writing on the wall to me is that they are not happy with Wilson or Fields. Like, I think it's someone other than those two is the starting quarterback for the Steelers next year. And with Rodgers kind of not really having a home right now, not one that makes a whole lot of sense, and with his desire, he says he wants to go somewhere where he can win and compete, the Steelers are the best option for that. And I think it could be just kind of like two desperate boats meeting in the night.
Yeah. I think he's on the couch.
Yeah.
I think he's on the couch. I don't know if a team's going to take him on. I get the Jets are already a dysfunctional organization, and maybe the Steelers think they can reel him back in, but I would feel so bad for Mike Tomlin. The amount of head cases he's had to deal with already, and then you'd bring in him. I mean, unless you're trying to push Tomlin out and just make him go crazy, then you'd bring in Rodgers. I think he's done. This feels like an old Raiders move, right? Like, I feel like pre-Pete Carroll, just all that. I feel like, maybe they would take a shot on Rodgers, but right now, I can't think of a team where it makes sense. I don't, because I don't know how you put up with the head case. If the Jets are saying we're done, the Jets are already dysfunctional as hell. And if one of the most dysfunctional organizations in football says we're done with this guy, we think he's a head case, I can't imagine another team being like, let's give him another shot.
No, like it's not an easy sell. Like there's really not a whole lot of upside. Like Rodgers as a player on the field, like removing all of the off the field stuff that frustrates fan bases and somehow made the Jets fan base even more like dysfunctional than it already was. Who wants to like take a quarterback who's clearly like not even on the decline, has declined. Like he's past the decline. He's already declined. Who really wants to take that on? With the Steelers, when you look at that though, I would be, thoroughly entertained watching Aaron Rodgers have to interact with George Pickens on a daily basis.
That'd be wild. Final guy, we're going to talk about Justin Fields. You mentioned he's most likely not going to be a Steeler. Where do you think Justin Fields ends up?
I think the Jets give him a look. I think that he makes a lot of sense for what the Jets would like to do. I think that the Jets need something fresh. You look at what they've tried to run through with Zach Wilson, with Aaron Rodgers. Like they've thrown a lot of different things at the wall. And I think that Tyrod Taylor's still on the team. I think he's someone who could really help out Justin Fields in some of his development. I'm still a believer in Justin Fields. I know he hasn't totally shown it on the field, and like he still does have a ways to go and a ways to grow. But the talent is quite obvious. The athletic tools are still there. I think that it's something that the Jets would definitely take a swing on.
I think he's a backup now. I think Fields is officially a backup. I think a guy or a place where he could go. Honestly, this is not me trying to be a homer, but I think Kansas City. Andy Reid's done a great job in the past with backup quarterbacks and making them viable and sometimes even getting them second and third opportunities. It's happened before with guys like Nick Foles, right? He's one that always stands out. I don't know if they're going to keep Carson Wentz one more year. Don't know how that's going to end up going, but they like having veteran backups. And while Justin Fields doesn't really fall into that 30-plus-year-old category, he's still a veteran who has started games, which is something that Andy Reid really looks for. They don't do QB sneaks with Patrick Mahomes. I wonder, bringing in an athletic guy, would Justin Fields have his own set of package plays? I think there'd be something intriguing there. I feel like just for that reason, he's a veteran who started games, and he could have his potential own package of plays in Kansas City in short yardage situations, which the Chiefs have done before in the past with a lot of times a backup tight end. I just wonder if Justin Fields, they did with Blake Bell, like just different, like, so I wonder if they would ever do that with Justin Fields. So actually, if Fields is going to be a backup and he's willing to accept he's a QB2, I think KC could be an opportunity to still see the field and learn from, a year or two down the road, get another opportunity.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And it definitely, Fields' market is one that's hard to gauge because I believe in him, but I can't argue with the idea that he kind of is seen as a backup at this point. So like if he needs to go somewhere to get an opportunity, why not go to a team like the Chiefs where you're going to be in good hands?
Yeah. And the Jets, obviously, we know he's great behind bad offensive lines, so I'm sure that would go great. That would go very, very well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, 2-minute drill. Let's go through a couple of these final questions. One non-QB free agent that you think will make the biggest impact in 2025.
Yeah, I'm going with Ronnie Stanley, obviously offensive tackle from the Baltimore Ravens. And I think that, there's a good chance that he returns to the Ravens. And obviously that's huge for what they want to do with Derrick Henry gets extended and Lamar Jackson's obviously going to be there. Like, if they lose him, that's going to impact the Ravens. That's going to impact a AFC contender in the Ravens. And they don't really have a contingency plan right now that you can really feel confident in. And then you look at the places that he could potentially go. If he goes to somewhere like the Bears, if he goes to somewhere like the Patriots, somewhere with a young quarterback who needs offensive line help, he's someone that, when healthy, can absolutely elevate an offensive line. So not only could he have a tremendous effect, both positive and negative, on the Ravens, but whatever team he were to land on, if he were to leave Baltimore, he could have a pretty instant impact, especially if you're in a young quarterback situation, which I think are a lot of the offensive line needy teams this offseason.
Yeah, the one thing I will say with Ronnie Stanley, I think the talent is obviously there. The question I have is, of course, he finishes full season, the first time he's ever played every single game in his contract year. That always gives me a little bit of, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying all the injuries, that he's played through, but it is always is a little questionable to me. It always gives me a little bit of cause to pause when he's going to want top-end left tackle money. So that's going to be very difficult. The guy I brought up, he's not a free agent yet, but I think he's going to get released, and that's Joey Bosa. Mm-hmm. Joey Bosa has not been the same guy for a couple years now with the Chargers. And I just wonder if him getting out of LA, different training staff. I mean, he's played, 5 games, 9 games, and 14 games over his in the past 3 years. Only had 5 sacks this year. He's really not been the same guy. A change of scenery, I think, would do him good, help him get healthy. Again, the Chargers have not been known for keeping a lot of guys healthy in the past. I don't know if that's training, dietitian, lucky. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it's the feel. Like, it could be a multitude of reasons where they built on an Indian burial ground. I don't know.
Tyrod Taylor got stabbed in the lung. Like, let's just be clear. That's a thing that happened in the Chargers locker room.
Like, they're perpetually their stars are injured. And so I'm like, all right, they cut Joey Bosa, which I think is going to happen. I feel like he could be an impact player on another team. I don't know what his contract is even going to look like. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. You're probably... No. So I just think he could be a guy that goes to a team and makes a big impact, maybe plays a full slate of games for the first time in years. So I just think that Joey Bosa actually has a good chance of being that impact player.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Like, sometimes, and it's weird to put injuries in this category, but a change of scenery can do wonders. Like, getting with a new training staff, maybe they recognize something that the other training staff didn't. And, like, I look at teams like, the Packers have a need on the edge rusher, like on the edge rusher front. Like, I think that would make a lot of sense if you put them on the Packers with Rashawn Gary on the edge. Like, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, honestly, your Chiefs make a lot of sense. Like, there's always a need for impact edge rushers. And we know that Joey Bosa, when healthy, can be that. And he's still not old. Like, he's 29, if I'm remembering correctly. Yep. So, like, there's a chance that this turns around. Like, sometimes bad luck is a thing, and like, you need to just change that luck a little bit.
I think the Bills make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but yeah, I think he could be an impact player, and the Bills might be the benefactory of that. All right, final question: one player you're excited to watch during the NFL Combine?
Oh, that's Iowa State cornerback, Darian Porter. Dude's a freak. So this guy, he was listed at 6'4", measured in at the Senior Bowl at about 6'2.5", so a little bit smaller than 6'4", little under 200 pounds. Dude's a freak athlete. I was looking at Bruce Feldman's freaks list over on The Athletic, and this guy, when he was a senior in high school, ran a 46.9 second 400 meter, setting the state record. And the reason, like, you look at him as a prospect, and it's like, where did he come from? Like, he wasn't on like preseason draft boards. No one really knew who this guy was. And it turns out the reason that is, he went to Iowa State as a wide receiver, played 3 years of wide receiver, didn't do a whole lot, got injured his 4th year. They converted him to cornerback, and then he played largely special teams his 5th season in the program. And then his 6th season, he broke out as a cornerback and finally got reps. This dude has like shot up draft boards already, and I think that's only going to continue when you get a freak athlete like this out onto the, out in his underwear in Indianapolis.
I know, Cody, big, very excited to look at dudes in underwear, huh? Is that what?
Yeah, absolutely.
Know what you're saying?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Who doesn't love a nice tight spandex, especially on offensive lineman day? It's the best day of the year.
Brother, Luther Burden is the guy I'm looking at. Luther Burden III from Missouri. Had a down year this year, had a really nice college career, maybe a little underwhelming overall, at least statistically speaking. He was used as the best decoy in all of football this year for the Missouri Tigers, but he's been an interesting guy where prior to this year, there was talk of him being, even the first overall draft pick. There was talk of him being for sure top 10, but probably the first wide receiver off the board. And then now you're seeing a lot of people don't even have him in their first round. Some of that, I think, could be the fact that he's not the fastest dude. So I think actually his 40 time, which I normally think is completely overblown, I think his 40 time and how he actually tests is going to be huge. I think of him almost as a Jamar Chase light as far as his body type. He's about 6 foot, but he's just stocky, incredible yards after catch. Maybe not the fastest guy, but his contact balance is so hard to bring down. Luther Burden's a very interesting prospect, and I think a lot of, again, out of the first round too, he had a couple of situations, nothing off the field. I mean, from all accounts, just a great guy, but he has that little wide receiver in him. Wide receiver where things might not be going your way, and at times you let the emotions get the best of you. It happened against Texas A&M earlier this year where he just was, and I understand the frustration. I mean, you've been used as a decoy almost all season long. You're one of the best wide receivers in the entire nation, and they're not even looking your way. I get that. For the most part of the season, he did a great job being, again, the blocking, the dirty work, which is hilarious from a guy like him. I just do think that Luther Burden, whoever gets him, is going to get one of the best yak players in the NFL. I hope he falls to 31 to Kansas City. I really do. If those draft boards are holding up the way that some of the people on ESPN have laid them out, but if you told me he still went, top 15, I'd believe that because I do believe the measurables and what he does at the combine are going to be huge.
No, I think that's a really good point. Like, he's someone who, if you watch the tape, especially the 2023 tape, like, he's an electric player and he's a playmaker. And honestly, a guy who I think he plays very similarly to, like, I like the Jamar Chase thing for body comp, but in terms of play style, he reminds me a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown in terms of like that ability to just get open in the short areas and then make a big play happen with your own like ability in small spaces. So like, I like that comp for him. So not only do I think the 40 is going to be crucial for him, I think the 3-cone. I think his 3-cone time is going to be really good, but it's going to be one of those things that really opens eyes for teams.
Yeah, again, he's not the fastest guy, but neither was Amon-Ra St. Brown, neither is Jamar Chase. I just wonder, again, when I say that, I'm not comparing him to Jamar as like, he's going to be that guy. But I think he can be a 1,000+ yard receiver consistently in the NFL. Not a 1,600 yard receiver, but like, I think he is going to be a really good player. The yak ability is there. You put him in San Francisco, I think he would thrive. You put him in Kansas City, I think he would thrive. There are just certain schemes they're going to fit him really, really well. Again, we will find out what his numbers are because I think of almost any player, he has maybe one of the biggest variances, high and low, first or second round of players. Again, MIZ, so we will find out. Cody, appreciate you doing this and filling in for Ian.
Absolutely, man. Happy to be here. If you ever want to have me back, if you ever want to just push Ian to the side, I'm always available. So.
Oh, we love pushing Ian to the side. That's one of our favorite things to do right here on Stacking the Box.
I'm not even on the show, and I love to do it. So
everyone give us a like, subscribe, give us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time, we are out.